Hey everybody, welcome back. It's Tiff with Voices for Independence, Fitness and Activities. I am here with one last recipe for this week. So we've been focusing on eating well and using healthy, fresh ingredients. So tonight we are going to be making a creamy spinach artichoke chicken skillet. So I always go over this, depending on if you have different eating styles that you like to stick to. This recipe is paleo, it's Whole30, and it's keto. And for those of folks who are like me, it's just plain healthy. So I'm going to go over the recipe. I'm making a few substitutions which may take it out of one of those categories, and I'll let you know when I do that. So what you're going to need for this recipe is about 4 small chicken breasts or 2 large halves. What they recommend you do is to season it with some salt, pepper, a little paprika, garlic, maybe some basil, and then you're going to cook it in the skillet. What I did, I always find easier, and I just like to do is I like to bake it in the oven. That way I can ensure that it's cooked all the way through and I don't have to sit there and watch it. So I pre-baked my chicken in a 350-degree oven for about 30 to 40 minutes, depending on the thickness of your chicken breast. Then I like to turn the broiler on for about 5 minutes just to get a nice crunch on the outside. I had seasoned my chicken with salt, pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, and some paprika. So there's my chicken already pre-cooked. You can follow the instructions and do it right in the skillet if you want, or you can do it that way. So once your chicken is done, you're going to take it out of the skillet. They suggest wiping the skillet down. It's probably not necessary because everything's going right back in it eventually. But now we're going to make our creamy spinach sauce that's going to go with the chicken. So for this, we're going to turn our skillet on. I'm going to turn mine on a medium high for now, like a 5 on your stovetop. And we are going to saute our garlic and onions at this time. So what you'll want to do is take about a tablespoon of olive oil or ghee. Ghee is just clarified butter. This is what makes it Whole30 and paleo, actually. It is basically clarified butter, just renders out the milk fat, so that part is separated out. You can use a tablespoon of butter if you want, or olive oil if you're choosing a healthier option. So I'm going to add my tablespoon right in there, and we're going to melt that down. And then we're going to add our onions and our garlic right to this. So for our onions, they suggest 1 medium onion, finely chopped, and I did that ahead of time for us. My onion was a little bit large, but again, I enjoy onions, so I don't really have a problem adding a little bit extra, but we're going to throw that right in our skillet, our medium onion, diced thinly and finely. They want really small dice for this one. And then we're going to add about 3 cloves of garlic. If you're like me and you like to use the minced garlic, a half a teaspoon is equivalent to 1 clove. So I'm going to add about 1.5 teaspoons to get my 3 cloves. We're going to add that right into the onion and oil as well, whatever oil you're sauteing your onions in. And we're going to let that cook down for about 1 to 2 minutes. We're just trying to brown up those onions. I'm going to turn mine up a little bit, my heat up a little bit, just to get it a little warmer. I didn't preheat my skillet at all, so I'd recommend doing that as well. And my oil was a little bit cold, my ghee. All right, so my onions starting to cook down and saute a little. I'll go over the recipe, the rest of the ingredients with you, and then we'll get going on it after we let that sit. So you're also going to need for this 1 can or jar or 14 ounces of artichokes. Mine were whole. They want you to quarter them, so I just took them out and cut them in quarters on my own. All right, because those will be going in later as well. You're going to need a little bit of chicken broth for this, about a 1/4 cup. I'm using some free-range organic chicken broth. You'll also need a full-fat unsweetened coconut milk. That's going to be our base. That's taking place of that heavy cream that we're trying to avoid in our recipes. Also, this calls for arrowroot starch. Basically, it's like a corn starch, but it's made from arrowroot. So It meets the guidelines for some of those certain eating styles. I don't have arrowroot starch at this time, so I am just going to use my cornstarch. You can use tapioca starch, you can use flour. It's just a thickener to kind of thicken our sauce up a little bit, just like you would when you're making any type of sauce in on your stovetop. All right, so my onions are starting to get cooked down here. What we're going to do next is we are going to add our 1/4 cup of chicken broth to our recipe. We're going to add it right to the skillet, just like my one bowl cooking. This is our 1 skillet dish. You know I love those, less dishes. So we're going to add a 1/4 cup of chicken broth. I'm going to add that right in there. And then we're going to add, I believe they want like 14 ounces of your coconut milk. So sometimes if you get that in the can, it'll be just 1 can, but I have the larger container. This is like double that. So I'm just going to measure out my 14 ounces. Mine, they need to shake up a little better. Let me shake this up a little bit. Always shake up your coconut milk. I thought I had done that beforehand, but I guess not. So I'm just going to mix it up a little bit. The coconut and the water, that's all coconut milk is, separates a little bit when it's before you use it. So I'm just going to whisk that back together. And then I'm going to finish measuring out my 14 ounces of my unsweetened coconut milk. It's a great base if you're looking for an alternative to a lot of soups and sauces. We used it the other day, if you recall, in our taco bake, and it came out wonderful. All right, so we have our 13.5 to 14 ounces of coconut milk added. And then what we're going to do at this time, you're going to add a little bit of salt and pepper if you want. I'm going to leave that to taste at the end. And you're also going to add at this time your thickening agents, which can be your arrowroot starch, your cornstarch, your tapioca starch, your flour. All those will have the same function, and they all even out in measurement too. It's 1 tablespoon for all those. Whichever one you're using, just choose one. All right, so I am then going to mix in my cornstarch or whatever starch you are using. And it's going to help thicken up this base a little bit for our spinach artichoke sauce. And then you typically want to let this sit in and reduce a little bit for about 2 to 3 minutes. So we're going to let that sit there while I go over the rest of it, because all at this point, what you're going to want to do is measure out 2 cups firmly packed, and I'm just going to use my same measuring cup because it's all going in the same place of spinach. You can use frozen spinach if you want, and then just look at the amount on the packaging. I'm just going to firmly pack 2 cups of fresh spinach into my measuring cup. And then if you have ever worked with fresh leafy greens before, you put them in steam or anything warm, they will cook down a lot. So this may seem like I'm using almost this whole container, but they do cook down a lot, folks. All right, so I'm just going to keep stirring my sauce a little bit here, waiting for that to thicken up a touch. And it seems to be doing that with that cornstarch in there. Again, whatever starch alternative you want to use to keep it in compliance with whatever eating style you are adhering to. All right, so mine's starting to thicken up. So at this time they say you can go ahead and put your 2 cups of spinach in. We're gonna have to help it out of there. I packed it in so tight. I love my spinach, and it's so good for you as well. Oops, the little guy jumped out. All right, so I'm gonna get that in there, kind of push it down into your sauce that you're preparing. And then also, at this time, you're gonna go ahead and you're going to add your 14, oops, more spinach. You're going to add your 14-ounce jar of quartered artichokes. So we're gonna put that right in as well. People are gonna think you're an amazing chef, and this is such an easy recipe, but it's such a delicacy. It's a real fancy dish to make and impress people, but it's super easy to do. And that's basically all there is to it. You want this to cook down for a few minutes, and then you're going to take your chicken breasts, and we are going to your cooked chicken, and we're going to place these back in the skillet and cover them with the sauce. And you're just gonna let it sit on warm heat till you're ready to serve. Or if you're not serving it quite yet, it'll be just fine if you take it off the heat, put a lid on it, stick it in the fridge, and heat it up later. Everything's pre-cooked and it's ready to go. So I hope you guys enjoyed this recipe. I can't wait to try it. I've never made anything like this before. So give it a try. I'll share the recipe in the comments, and you guys have an awesome weekend.